to run away from tension, and therefore to look to false opposites, false dichotomies, and simple solutions in our thinking. And so it's refreshing when you read somebody whose work really transcends that, who doesn't simply fall into the white people are born with a gene that makes them evil, or black people are born with a gene that makes them unequal, you know, this sort of a thing. But is willing to understand and grasp the interaction again, that to be able to walk that line. And the only way you can really do that is by being someone who listens a lot. You know, I mean, you know, I've been doing a certain amount of traveling lately, and the more I travel, the more I realize I don't know. I mean, really, it's a big world out there. And we have, myself, I mean, I just came back from India. I walked in the museum in Delhi. They said, oh, this family controlled northern India for 700 years, except for this family that took it over for 129 years. And I'm thinking, we talk about the Clinton era? Talking about the Nixon era. You know, we don't have a conception at all. And it just makes me realize that the world doesn't wake up every morning and say, how can I fit into Alan's theory? You know, you're driving into a small town in central Illinois, it's an all-white town, there's a Chinese restaurant. You say, how did that get here? It's not like the Chinese family that decided to have that restaurant woke up in the morning and said, Alan has a theory that says it doesn't make any sense for us to be here, so let's not open the restaurant. What I'm saying, in essence, is that we have to be modest before the data, which doesn't mean we can't have a theory. It doesn't mean we can't call ourselves Marxists or whatever term we want, you know, because out of the chaos are clusters, are concrete truths that are real enough to stand on for long periods of time. They just don't predefine reality. So, in the end, I just wanted to say that there are people that have hard power. This is a term that came about when Bush was president, when people realized he didn't know anything, and the person really with the power was Rove, who had soft power. And so there are the famous ones, the superstars, you know, William Wilson, this one, that one. And then there are the ones who have a much more powerful, lasting effect, who never really achieves the kind of superstardom in the bourgeois media, but whose impact on the world is much more profound and much more lasting. You know, you think about Du Bois. So finally they recognize him as a great black sociologist. He's a great sociologist. He's a great activist. He's a great social scientist. He wasn't just a black sociologist. O.C. Cox, who was only discovered years and years after he died. And Rod, who basically falls into that same category, in my opinion. I think that the legacy of what he did, you know, it's a cliche to say that it'll live on, but it was very important. It affected a lot of people who in turn will carry that forward. One last thing about Rod is that he was always smiling, and I think that's important, because revolutionaries should be happy. They should be happy. They should be happy to be a part of the struggle. They should be happy that we are able to take a little piece of our life and make it be non-alienated, that we can rip it away from the attempt by the capitalists to control everything we do and every way we think. And Rod manifested that, and not just in a silly happiness, but it comes from having ties with grassroots people, was feeling connected to the masses, to the people, to the working class. And Rod always manifested that as well. So I'll finish off by saying that he created a lot of momentum, not just in the specific work that he did, but in the way he carried out the struggle and the way he thought about things in a deep way. And it's our responsibility to carry that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And right now, we're not on the program, but we're going to ask Malik to come and make a few comments. And Malik will be followed by Melanie.
Thank you. Hi, y'all. I am my father's son. You might be able to see some of him in me. I'm fatter than he was. But most of the rest is very similar. And I wanted to take a moment because it seems that there's a lot about my father that's somehow mysterious. And I kind of know a couple of the answers. So I wanted to share them with you because they are a charge to all of us that to remember without action is empty. Don't just remember my dad and say, oh, he had a nice smile, although he did have an awesome smile. He wanted to make the world a better place. He gave 99% of his life to making the world a better place. The other 1% he gave me. Yesterday, I was robbed. I got my cell phone stolen from me, which sucks. And but if you knew me well, it sucks even more because I have superpowers. I have a number of really significant superpowers. They are all located in my phone. A nice man walked up to me and said, hey brother, you got a cigarette? And I happened to be smoking, so I couldn't perpetrate like I didn't. And so I gave him one, and he said, oh yeah, I just got mugged, they took my phone, my money, and can I use your phone? Call my phone. I said, sure, because I'm a rube from Minnesota. No, that's not why. Because I'm my father's son. And I have good reason to believe that he would not have done the same thing only because it's probably been written somewhere in a police report. The last thing you want to do is to give somebody your cell phone because they'll walk away with it. But if not for, he would have done that. Of course he would have done that. And I couldn't think of any reason why not. This nice black man, and he asked me if I got high and asked me if I drank, and that should have given me some indications, I suppose. But he was a man trying to figure it out. That I can have absolute trust in. I don't know anything else about him. I don't know his name. I couldn't find him, even though I really want to. The change that my father expected of the world was to expect a world where you don't say, this man who appears to be homeless, this man who happens to be black, this man who just got out of hospital because somebody hit him upside the head, this man who calls himself in public a pimp, as a way of saying, of course, he wouldn't steal somebody's phone because he's got bigger things to worry about. That this man is just as much of a man as I am wearing a suit. That he has every right and we have every responsibility to treat him as the human that he is. Don't trust him with your phone, though. My father had an abundance of energy and passion and joy. And if you knew him, again, you know this. This is what he brought to the world. And it all is rooted, and I'm not an academic, but I will say two things. One, I believe he took a generational long view of the world. And I know, and again, I know why that is. It didn't just come out of him reading interesting books. I stand on his shoulders. He stands on the shoulders of my grandfather. We live in a culture that helps us remember all the time the essential nature that we are not standing alone, that we didn't just figure it out by ourselves, that my Grandma Bush was smarter than I was. She continues to be smarter than I am. She's dead as well, but she's really smart. Did she have a lot of book learning? Did she have 2 master's degrees and a doctoral degree? No. She just was smarter than I was because she'd seen it. She'd walked it. She'd done it. And if you asked her, she wouldn't say much, but if you waited, she'd let you know. Why did he do it? How did he do it? He did it because he loves you. My father loves everyone in this room. He loves everyone on the planet. There are really good reasons for him to be a bitter, crunchy, hateful man. He'd seen a lot. But he wasn't. Did anybody ever see him go bitter and crunchy? I defy you, because it didn't happen. Even with me when I did stupid things. Gentle, reminding, sometimes a really, really, really long lecture, which made you wish you could get a spanking and just get it over with. But in closing, I want to say that my dad has an expectation of each and every one in this room, maybe most of you. Don't search for a love like the love he exposed to you. Don't go looking for it. You might find it, but that's not the point. He said, be that love. Be someone who people at some point in the future will say, wow, that guy made a difference because he cared enough to help me find my voice. He cared enough to make me serious about my intellectual endeavors. He cared enough to be there in his office at 10 o'clock at night talking to me. That he was there at 4 o'clock in the morning when I called after having been at the office until 10 o'clock at night. Be that love. If you can do that, then you've done him honor. And I want you to do that. Because he was my dad. And he gave you a lot. So, thank you.
Needless to say, that was a very valuable contribution. Next, we have Mel to make some closing remarks, and then I need to make some announcements as we end.
We should be ending in a few minutes.
I know.
I'm trying to think if I can edit some of what I said, because I obviously not coordinated, but have many of the same messages. So I'll start by saying to the colleagues, friends, and comrades gathered here, you inspired and grounded Rod through meaningful conversations, extraordinary adventures, struggles, and celebrations. You meant the world to him. And even in your sadness, he wants you to carry that blessing, the blessing of your friendship with dignity and with pride. His love for you is everlasting. His love is without limits or timestamps. It is eternal. Do not forget that to Rod you really matter. And from our family and from me, thank you for loving wishes, gestures, and the thoughts that you've shared with us over this period of time. As others have just done, I'd like to suggest a few possible reflections on a life well lived. Rod's loving soul and very being provides insight for a response to Grace Boggs' questions. What does it mean to be human in the 21st century? Who will we choose to be in a world not of our choosing? When I started to think about how to sustain the engagement of Rod's life force, the following principles came to mind: community, collaboration, collectivity, inclusivity, relationship, connection, teamwork, impact, engagement, making a difference in process and in outcome, synergy, complexity, interconnectedness, dialectics, curiosity, play, integrity, principle, humility, wisdom, dignity, love of, and commitment to humanity, love. These have translated in a few themes over the course of our 31 years together. Number one, on really trying and doing our best. If you believe that Rod was an extraordinary human being, and I believe you do, then remember, he believed that you and you and you and you are also extraordinary. But how do we do that? How have we established our routines and stuck by them that what might we do differently to be fiercer fighters, greater lovers of humanity, each other, and ourselves? Rod's soul resided in a profound belief in the power of the people, individually and collectively, and that we must never surrender to anything less than victory. If we only see how smart or how loving he was, and view him as an exception to the rule, then we miss his point. Of course he was so special, and no one in this room, maybe Molly, knows that better than me, but he was especially special in his belief in us. We see him as a superhero, but need to recognize he saw each of us that way too. That means reaching deep within, holding high expectations, and deep love of ourselves and for each other. It means recognizing that what we do or do not do affects those around us, both immediately and more broadly. It means always working toward better. It means not surrendering to the pressures of these miserable times, and they are most certainly increasingly difficult and overwhelming. And when we do get weak, it means getting back to the fight as soon as we can, being forgiving of ourselves and of each other. We all have superpowers. What can we do to recognize them and cultivate them in ourselves and in each other? In what ways are we doing our best to bring each other's superpowers to light? What might we do differently that will allow them to be more present for humanity, for community, for each other, and for ourselves? On humility and being good listeners, Rod deeply believed we can learn from each other across experience and perspective. Alan actually noted that how incredible it was that he could hold his ground with his own point of view while still listening. Can't we all do that? And why don't we? With humility and respect, ever pursuing a deeper understanding and connection to each other? Maybe not the way Rod did it, but in our way, for we need all of us to face the enormous challenge of our times. It was in fact humility that Rod claimed to be the source of great strength in our blessed partnership. For love is more about the connection than about being right. That's true in romance, but it's also true in friendship and comradeship. We're also imperfect. Why not accept that fact and be life learners and life lovers in the whole self sense? On being present and on laughter, Rod deeply believed in being in the moment and finding the sweetness of our own imperfections and the silly and the corny in everyday life. How might each of us do better at embodying these qualities? Maybe it's age, but why worry so much about how we appear to others? Patience and openness to experiences and to each other are truly virtues. On biography and storytelling, the power of Rod's writing flowed from his rootedness in his own biography. Most everything starts with a story and leads us to understand its history and implications. Stories are critical. What's yours? How are you listening to those stories of your neighbor? And finally, I'd like to draw on a very personal theme, but one that I think has much deeper implications. Our household lived by statements of always. We always blow kisses in the morning and wave goodbye in the morning. And if we don't leave if we leave at the same time, we drive to the point we have to separate and do it from there. We always embrace soulfully at night. We always have Adventure Fridays in the summer. For a decade of New Year's days, we always graffitied Rod and Mel, Soulmates Forever, all around the country. We threw bottles in the ocean, affirming our love. We always fed ourselves each bites, to which the kids were totally grossed out. We always, well, you get the idea. We even made a list some years ago of the things we'd always do when we were apart from each other, like both wear certain t-shirts to sleep in, write nightly letters, and the person who was away would have a supply of jelly beans to count each day apart. We always dreamed and planned our next adventures, so we'd have lists now that span to the year 2033. While these are personal examples, when I reflect on the way we embedded always into our daily life, I believe it was an expression of our choice to live consciously, deliberately, and by principle. It was a way to define who we are and what we are about and what is important. We always sought to do better next time, even when we didn't actually do it. What do you always do? What do you always want to do? Indeed, what does it mean to be human in the 21st century? Who will we choose to be in a world not of our choosing? And as Malik just said, why can't we be loving in the way that Rod was? What's holding each or any one of us back from using that as a part of our every minute of our every day? And last, again, on behalf of the family, deep thanks to each and every one of you who in little and big ways have given to us in this period of time. You are the fiber of our thread. God truly did believe that we shall overcome as a logical and imperative outcome of the power of the people. Let us go forth with that blessing. Embrace love in all its possibilities. For all we have is now until eternity and a day. And take heed of what the Zapatistas posted after the recent death of Compañero Galeano. We ask ourselves not what we do with his death, but what we do with his life.
We're going to take a short break now. I want to thank the people who made sacrifice to get to this meeting, and also particularly want to thank David Fastenfest for critical sociology having given us the space and the time. So at any rate, and I have some other announcements to make, but I'll make them at the beginning of the next session because people are probably going to go from here to another session. But anyway, there are flyers, and also visit rodbush.org for us to fill in some of the blanks. Okay.
And we'll be here in about 10 minutes for the next session, which will continue this discussion. Right. And Bob is going to be orchestrating that as well. So thanks. And thank you all.
Thanks for coming.
And don't forget there are books back there if you need them, and flyers.